we believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson. If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from. That's what we do every week, so we can hear from you guys and where you're from. Tonight, we're going to be talking about an important subject that I find relevant to so many people, and that is finding your way out of simply existing or surviving to actually thriving. Remember, survival mode can be applied to many things in our lives. We can be in a survival mode physically, financially, emotionally, or spiritually. So apply what you learned tonight to whatever area makes sense for you. And don't forget to ask questions along the way. That's one of the beauties of the wonderful things about being live, is that you guys can interact with us live on the air. So we're going to be having a live Q&A with my guest at the end of the show. So if something pops in your head, just put it in the comments and we'll get to it. My guest, Ryan Luchau, has an inspirational story of moving through surviving to thriving. And it is my hope that sharing his work and mission will help others learn to live a more fulfilling life and to know we're not alone in this. We're not alone on this journey here. And the more that we can help each other, the better off we'll all be. So for those of you that aren't really familiar with Defenders Live, you may be wondering how this ties in with Defenders Live and Defenders USA, because isn't Defenders Live a gun show? Well, no, not really. It's not a gun show. We have lots of people that are experienced in firearms and shooting and self-defense, but the mission at Defenders Live and Defenders USA is to develop people and facilitate their growth. We just happen to do that through firearms training and self-defense education. But we have to remember, as defenders, we are not only personally responsible for our physical safety, we should also be responsible for our health, our finances, our overall well-being of our families, both emotionally and spiritually. As part of our mission of developing people to reach their full potential, both on and off the range, we find that the growth that people experience ripples through their entire lives. And it ripples and resonates through everything else in their life. So keep that in mind as we continue forward, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, so moving on, Adam Winch, are you back there? The founder of Defenders USA is behind the scenes helping me out tonight because, as you know, I need all the help I can get. He'll be managing comments and banning you if you say mean things. Right, Adam? Oh, he left. And so don't be... He's like, I never know what she's going to do. So if you see Adam pop on the screen, don't be alarmed. He may have comments or questions to add during the interview. So I wanted to introduce him to you. A few announcements before we formally begin. I'm excited to let you know that Defenders Live is now officially on every podcasting platform, or almost every podcasting platform, including iTunes and Spotify. So be sure to listen to us over there and leave a review. And you also can go to defenders-live.com to sign up for email notifications so you won't miss out on what is happening with Defenders Live. So go there and you'll get up to date on all of those things. And you can also join our private Facebook group as well. Now, I want you to stay tuned till the end of the broadcast because I do have a couple of special announcements I want to announce then. And then I want to share with you what to expect for next week as well. And as I said before, don't be shy. Ask your questions in the comments. If something pops in your head, just drop it in the comments and we will gather those at the end of the broadcast for our live Q&A with Ryan. All right. Is anybody watching, Adam? Yeah, we've got some people here. Good. Well, thank God I'm not talking to myself. That's great. It looks like we've got Hey Scars from Ohio. We've got Aaron back. You're watching again. Happy New Year, Aaron. And other people watching from Belgrade and Helena and Nancy. Hi, Nancy. And my friend Sam is watching as well. So shout out to all you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's going to be a good evening, and I hope that we can unpack all of the great things I have in store for you tonight. So let's get right into the interview with Ryan Luchau. Ryan is the founder and executive director of Impact Montana, and he is a native Montanan and retired in December 2020 from the Montana Army National Guard after 21 years of service, deploying in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2004, and with the 639th Quartermaster Company, and in 2018 and 19 as the Battalion Chaplain for the 495th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion. Ryan has worked in many military and veteran support capacities in the military, state government, and the private sector. And he has a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences from Washington State University and a Master's in Divinity from Liberty University. He resides in Helena, Montana with his wife, Angie, and 5 children. So let's bring Ryan onto the show. Hey, Ryan.
Laura.
Oh, you were muted, but you're not anymore.
How you doing? There we go. Hello, Laura. Thanks for having me.
I'm watching your back, Ryan. I got your back. Don't worry about it. So I'm really looking forward to this interview tonight. There's a lot to unpack, as I said before, but we're going to get through what we can. And if we have to go over the hour, if we're really on a roll, we will. And if not, we'll just keep it at an hour. But I want to start with Ryan, the person, instead of Ryan, the executive director of Impact Montana. I know you wear a lot of different hats, but I want to dig into your story a little bit, because I think if people understand your story a little bit better and understand you a little bit better, the mission behind what you do will make a little bit more sense. So you have your own story of surviving to thriving, I would say, and you've dealt with and struggled with some mental health issues since your deployment, chronic pain and fatigue and other things we're going to get into a little bit later. But could we start even before that? Could we start at the young adult Ryan before he got into the military or in his early years of the military? What kind of a life perspective did you have back then? What was your worldview? What were your challenges and your perspective of the world back then?
Yeah, wow, Laura, that's a loaded list of questions. So
that could be the whole show right there.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start really out of high school. So growing up in Montana, kind of the expectation was that I would follow, all my friends' footsteps and go to either MSU, which I would never be a Bobcat. Don't hold it against me.
No, you just gained enemies there. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. But my dad played football in Missoula for the Grizz in the 60s. So I had an allegiance there in Missoula, but I did kind of the opposite of what everybody expected. And I went down to UNLV in Vegas and wanted to get out of the state, get into a different environment, kind of get out and spread my wings and fly. And that ended up being, I guess it was good in the sense that I got away from the nest, if you will. I went down there to study architecture because I thought I was going to be an architect. And I guess I can look back now and say that I am a visionary. I was a visionary and I am currently a visionary. That's kind of my gift set, if you will. But ended up only staying in Vegas for about a year and a half after losing a friend here in Montana tragically, and just really wanted to come back to Montana, kind of reestablish my roots here, and ended up going to Missoula actually when it was all said and done, trying to go back to school. But the funny part about that was so this was all in 1997 through 99. And it was in 99, after a year of going to school, that U of M cordially asked me to stop wasting both of our time and our resources, because I was not as successful as I needed to be to stay in school. So I guess you
Wow.
could say it was kind of that point that I wasn't ready to be an adult, and I needed a shift to help me
Mhm.
grow up and really kind
Mhm.
of mature.
Mhm.
And so that shift was really the military.
Mhm.
My brother was in the Navy, and we're 12 years apart. But I didn't want to go active duty because that meant leaving the state again. I really wanted to find an opportunity to serve in Montana, not have threat of deployment or travel abroad or whatever. So
Mhm.
I, based on a recommendation of a friend's dad who happened to be a colonel in the Guard at the time, he talked me into joining the Montana Army National Guard, which was kind of the best of both worlds. It was an opportunity to serve here in Montana, a lot of full time, great opportunities, great training. I did have to go to basic training. Obviously, that wasn't something I looked forward to, but certainly a lot of opportunity for maturing and discipline
Mhm.
enveloped in that experience. But yeah, thought I was going to be fighting fires. And just doing service for my neighbors in Montana. And shortly after that, so I joined in 2000, and shortly after that, 9/11 occurred, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my military service and a lot of other
Mhm.
folks, obviously as well, uh,
Mhm.
especially in the Guard, because the Guard is a rapidly deploying force globally. So it was November of '03 that I was activated for a 16-month deployment. And the funny part about that situation is I was given 3 weeks notice. So not only
Oh,
was I,
wow.
deploying for 16 months, but it was literally a 3 week notice leading up to having to to leave home. So the joke was on me, Laura. The joke was on me. I did fight fires, though. I did do that as
But
well.
I wanna know what kind of person you were back then, Ryan. I wanna know the young Ryan. I wanna know who he was. That's what I was trying to get at in my long, drawn out question.
Yes. Okay. So I was a guy that followed. I was a kid, an immature kid that really was following the lead of my dad. So my dad played football, as I mentioned, at U of M. Um, uh, my dad and my mom divorced when I was 10. So beyond that, he kind of gravitated towards really doing the single, life thing.
Mhm.
Some poor choices and things, and really, I followed his footsteps. And what I alluded to it in the book Chasing Impact was that I was chasing pleasure. I didn't have a worldview in which I was operating from. I didn't have a why. The why
Mhm.
is so incredibly valuable and important for anybody. And at 18 to 20 years old, we don't want a why. We just want to
Yeah,
live, right? We just
yeah.
we want to be we want
Live
to
in the
be
moment.
fulfilled with whatever it is that gives us that dopamine rush or
Mhm.
that pleasure for the moment, not thinking about the big picture and certainly the why.
Right.
Does
Yeah,
that
that's
help?
yeah, thank you. Because, I do want the timeline, but I also want people to understand where you've come from so they can understand where you are now
Sure.
and how
Yep.
you've grown. So I want to read this quote from your book. This is so for those of you that don't know about his book, it's called Chasing Impact, and I put a link in the comments so you can get it there, or in the description there is a link as well. But on page 39 of your book, Chasing Impact, you said, society tends to define us by our socioeconomic status, which promotes filling this definition through chasing pleasure until the value of purpose is greater than the perceived value of pleasure. The fact of the matter is that one will never find purpose living in pleasure. So it sounds like that's just an offshoot of what you were just telling us.
Yep. Yep. You have to have a why in order to put that pleasure chasing aside, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it has to be bigger than that dopamine rush. That and really, it's even it can be put into the lens of looking at pain and the value that can come from pain, right?
Mhm.
As obviously not pleasureful, but there is value in there. And sometimes we have to seek that pain in order to grow,
Right.
and, navigate through our
So
circumstances.
we don't do that naturally.
No, we don't.
No, that is not our nature. So then, okay, now put us back in the picture then with your deployment or getting deployed, and take us on from there. Then what happened?
Yeah. So, 2005, when I got back after that 16-month deployment, just, even though I was in the cradle of civilization, southern Iraq, where the birthplace of Abraham was, the Temple of Ur, just some really, really dynamic places globally. There was a kind of a seeking of something bigger than myself at that point. But when I got back to the States, it waned. It went back to that chasing pleasure, because it's so easy to do here in the States, right? We have everything we want at our disposal, and obviously it's 20 years later, but even coming back to the States and being able to go out and drink and party with friends, or whatever that situation looked like, I missed out 16 months of my life, and I wanted to catch up and kind of go back to that normal lifestyle, and unfortunately that didn't. Well, I guess it's fortunate at this point, because it led me to ultimately get to where I am now. But it was about 3 months after I got home, and this is all a God thing, Laura. 3 months after I got home, living in that pleasure, right, making up for lost time, I was actually at a friend's house, that it was supposed to be all guys, and his wife ended up having to stay home because their daughter got sick, and so she invited some friends over, and I ended up meeting my wife that night, and just this amazing woman of faith that, originally I can honestly say I didn't want really anything to do with, just because of where I was. But the beauty of it was, when I took a step back and realized what was happening, and that, God was walking alongside me in this journey, and really presenting me an opportunity, to change my trajectory. It just really was a monumental point in my journey. So, from that, that honestly, Laura, didn't really stop the struggles. That was really the point that my faith started growing. Thankfully, because of my wife's faith and grace and unconditional love, she walked alongside me in my struggles. But I went several years just trying to figure out how to negotiate the transition from deployment, which, I mean, in and of itself is a probably a extended conversation. But the stress, the chronic inflammation that was surfacing because of not addressing adrenal fatigue issues, and all these myriad of things, just led to complications, and really me getting to a point where I had chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And a VA doc, my VA doc had made the recommendation to me at 27 years old that I stopped doing any kind of high impact sports or running. And I mean, what what kind of
That's
news
crazy.
is that for anybody that's 27?
That's
right?
crazy. I want to interject something, if I may.
Sure.
So in your book, you talk about this. You say this adrenaline high from deployment related stress was resulting in some anger that I did not have a grasp on. I had no idea the extent of the stress, really, because living in it feels normal. Now, I don't, whether you've been deployed or not deployed, I guarantee you there's people watching this right now that can relate to that. And you also said over the short term, I had lost the bearing of who I was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I was to unpack that a little bit, I would say that, there's a lot of, like you say, a lot of people out there, men especially, that struggle with anger. For me specifically, was impulsive anger. So because my brain wasn't able to process stress, and really having that energy from the front of your brain where you where you reason, right, or you're supposed to have rational thought, and having that flow to the back, which there doesn't there's no rationality that comes from the back of the brain. Basically, that led to a high impulsive response in stressful situations. And really, at that point, the interesting thing about it, if I compare and contrast then to now, I mean, it was really a simple life. My environment was somewhat controlled, right? I was married, had a good job. Things were relatively normal environmentally for me. But for whatever reason, because that over time, that chronic stress from the deployment didn't get addressed, leading to the inflammatory issues and things in my body. It led to chaos, and really there was never any good answers for any of that. So I had to kind of go out on my own and figure out what those solutions look like. And that, honestly, we haven't really talked about this a whole lot, but that's what ultimately led to Impact Montana being born in 2014.
Oh, okay. I wondered about that.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to ask the question. Thank you. I do. So for people to understand how severe this really was for you, will you tell them the story about at the health fair?
Sure.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I think it was 2008. And I was working for the Montana Army National Guard, and they hosted, I think it was the first health and wellness fair that they had hosted as kind of a transition to, supporting our soldiers in a more holistic variety, right? Trying to do some things outside the box. And so there was a health fair here in Helena at Fort Harrison, and there was a biological age calculating scale. That's probably not the right scientific way to frame it, but we'll go with that. And I had peers, so I was 30 years old. I had peers that were getting on that scale, same ages, some a little bit older. And really, what I noticed is that scale was calculating roughly 10 to 15 years older than their actual physical age. Okay. And so with a little bit of peer pressure and people saying, "Hey, Ryan, why don't you get on that thing?" And I wasn't in bad physical shape at the point.
Okay. I wondered.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, no, not at all. But I got on that scale and I was 30 years old, and the scale read 70 years old. And
yikes.
So what had happened is that the inflammation in my body really, and you can't even see that when it becomes, if you're in relatively decent shape, you can't tell that there's that inflammatory disease, so to speak, that's infiltrating your body. And so it scared the tar out of me, and really, at that point it was when I started to make some significant changes, and just trying to address the root of the cause, because that's the important thing, right? How do you manage the stress to combat the inflammation, right? That's because you got to get to the root of the cause, otherwise you're just masking the symptoms for the rest of your life, and that wasn't something I was interested in doing.
Yeah, and I want you to talk about how you got to the root of it too. I got another quote I want to pull. I got quotables here. When I went through his book, you guys, I had pages and pages of quotable things that, but I just, we don't have time for that, but please go get it because it's just so valuable. You talked about stress in your book, and you said that it's not very often that people will associate physical health with mental health, and certainly spiritual health, but they are not mutually exclusive. Stress of any magnitude is managed easier when the purpose in the given stress is identified and understood. So how did you identify and understand what was really going on with you? Because at that point, you must have had a lot of motivation.
Yeah, that's really what it was. Is the first thing that the normal response when you go, to a medical provider is that mental health conversation comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't interested in talking about mental health. I was interested in addressing the root. If you can address the root cause of the problem, that's going to lead to a better mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have purpose and you can apply that purpose to the pain and hopefully motivate you, to the point where you're able to navigate out of those circumstances, there's value in that. And that's going to contribute to a better overall mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus I think what has kind of become, mainstream is just that immediate response of, hey, we just need to, prescribe something here and that'll fix the problem. Well, I tried that at one point, honestly. I think I was 21 years old and I was prescribed a antidepressant, and that didn't work well. And I wasn't interested in ever doing that again. That was a short-term situation, and that led me to making the decision that I would never do that again. So that forced me to really look at how brain health, which at this point now I recognize is even bigger than brain health. It's gut health, right? Gut health is your second brain. We don't need to get into those details, but if you address and promote your brain health, that's eventually going to get you to a place mentally that's going to be, better than where you were.
And so what you talked with me about on the phone the other day, a recent development that you have learned about, is that all tied into this as well, or how does that tie in?
It is. So, yeah. So I think you're referring to the MTHFR gene mutation. Okay. Just want to clarify that. So in November, I got to a place because of professional stress and really, I talked about having a controlled environment at 7 years old. Well, let's look at my situation now. I've got 5 kids at home, young, anywhere from 1 to 12, which, induces a significant amount of chaos and normal, stress, right, in the home. But professionally, I got to a place where I had really lost control of where I was at, basically. And it affected all areas of my life. Okay. And just being fully transparent here, ended up taking a break from my home to be able to extend the fuse and help me, just get to a place where I could manage my family better. Well, in a conversation through all of this, leveraging my resources, I've got an amazing tribe, right? We recognized it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. It was just a temporary break to fix, a temporary issue. But reaching out to some friends, there was a peer that recommended that I look into the MTHFR gene mutation because our conversation was presenting to her that I might be, predisposed with this gene mutation. And really what it is, it's the body's inability to methylate B12 vitamins. And so if you're not taking B12 vitamins, or if you're taking a poor form of B12 vitamins, not a methylated form, your brain doesn't have the ability to process. Your body's not metabolizing, and ultimately it doesn't help your brain to function the way it's supposed to. So with the simple recommendation and reaching out to other functional medicine providers in my peer group, which I'm very blessed to have it on my speed dial, they recommended I do a genetic test and determine if that was in fact the case. And then in the meantime, just start taking a methylated form of B12 vitamins and look at my D3 intake, magnesium, omegas, making sure that I was consistent in taking these supplements. And I mean, let's face it, I've been guilty in the past of going a month, being very disciplined, taking vitamins and supplements for a month, and then forgetting about it, right? Well, this was the point in my life that that made me realize how incredibly valuable supplements are. And so I haven't missed a day, since this occurred in November, and really it's been game changing. My ability to manage the chaos at home has improved. It's still not perfect, because I don't think that'll ever be the case. But my relationship with my wife, and again, I'm very grateful, because I don't know a lot of situations where it could get to this point, and really that why for the marriage is stronger than the stress in the moment, right? And that's really, I think, some of those quotes that you're pulling out is what is worth me staying in this? Because if it's about me, well, the easy road is me walking away from the chaos and my wife and my kids. The hard way to do it is to, lace up those bootstraps, get ready for the fight, and be in it, because it's bigger than me, right?
Right.
So that's ultimately, what's happened, thankfully.
So I want to say a couple things about that. I saw on Joe Rogan recently, the guy that talks about what you're talking about, Gary Brecka. I saw a video of him, and it turns out that this is really common.
Yes.
What percentage of people did you say have this gene mutation and this problem?
44%.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
Yes.
And he talked about on that show too that the that nutritional deficiencies is like rampant.
Yeah. So there's some, this is a place that I've really kind of tried to become a subject. I wouldn't say a subject matter expert, because I'll never be a subject matter expert, but I need to arm myself with this information, because it's a protective posture, right? I don't want to get back to that place that I was. So I've actually started listening to Gary Brecka's podcast on a daily basis. It's an incredibly high percentage, and there's a lot of things that we can do. In fact, part of what he promotes with the genetic testing is the value of knowing those genetic results, and so that you can supplement to where the gaps exist in your predisposition, right? Rather than trying to nail Jello to the wall. I love this quote, but it's rather than attempting to nail Jello to the wall and supplement across the spectrum, and really waste a lot of money, because our bodies have the ability to produce some of those, essential minerals and vitamins naturally. When we have a predisposed disposition, I didn't say that right, predisposed genetic condition, we need to figure out what those gaps are and fill those gaps, and probably in the process save some money. So
right, because that's going to be different for everybody. And this is a perfect time to bring up our mutual friend Sage Wellness, who is a service partner with you. And I know at Sage Wellness, they're out of Whitehall, Montana. You should look them up. They provide all kinds of wellness solutions regarding just these exact things. So I would recommend you guys look them up. So, okay, if there's nothing else you want to okay. I saw myself leave the screen and then I came back.
Yep, I got you now.
Whew. Okay. I saw Adam's face in the background too. He was like, "Oh no, what's happening?" Okay, so let's go into okay, so after deployment, then you had the big wake up call, right? And you met your wife, and then you kind of had, am I right about this? You kind of had a worldview change right around that same time too. What was that? And then how did that tie into you eventually writing your book?
Yeah, so the worldview just basically was that biblical. So transitioning from just this, cultural worldview to a biblical worldview, right? And over the course of time, so after about 10 years in my military career, I actually was called to the chaplaincy. So I finished out the last 11 years in the military as a chaplain. And so obviously with that experience, the worldview, matures and really develops into that stronger biblical worldview. And so over that course of time, I mean, even though the stress doesn't change and all the things, the chaos doesn't really change, that worldview just helps, recognize the value from it and helps you grow in your faith too, right? I mean, that's what ultimately we should be doing.
Right. And it gives you that strong foundation, of peace, of contentment, of knowing, that things can fall apart around you, but your response to that is what matters. And so your worldview is going to shape that response. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And really, I don't think there's a better example of that than what we experienced in 2020 with COVID, right? When COVID hit and the chaos ensued, I mean, really, there was an opportunity for people with faith to kind of be that cream to rise to the top and be the strong, resilient, community. And that's what I saw.
And not live in fear every day,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. For sure. Without a doubt. Yep.
Yeah. So then your book, Chasing Impact, it's an interesting title. Could you unpack that for us a little bit? What does Chasing Impact mean?
Well, so I think the word impact itself has a lot of different meaning for a lot of different people, right? And so when I put this together, it was the idea that we had to define impact and what that was, and what does it mean to chase something? Do we ever reach it? And if we don't know what we're chasing, we're not obviously going to reach it, right? So I defined impact in a biblical context, and then really tried to articulate the journey of trying to live outside of your own personal interests and really become a servant, right? Having that servant mindset and influencing others and really just being that ambassador for strength and resilience and all of those things that we ultimately want to be, obviously with
walking the walk instead of talking the talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it's not, it's not about, so there's two concepts. There's a functional capacity concept that I talk about, which is basically the depth of impact. So it doesn't really matter. There's guys out there like Tim Tebow who, has an enormous amount of money because of the success that he's, been able to achieve. And the impact that he has on this world is, I mean, it's infinite, right? He's a guy that has just done amazing things with his faith and with his resources. But then there's other, I won't name names because that won't be valuable, but then there's other individuals that make enormous amounts of money, but that impact is really shallow, right? So that functional capacity is really what we're doing with our resources. And I guess my desire, because I don't have Tim Tebow's resources. I mean, I was really blessed to go on that deployment in 2018 and 19 and make probably as much money as I'll ever make as a chaplain. And really what my wife and I did with those resources when we came home was try to bless others with it. So part of that was the book. Chasing Impact for me is it's not a financial reward by any stretch of the imagination. And we also actually hosted a Christian concert. We had Sanctus Real here in Helena, Montana, which was an amazing blessing, but again, not a money, not a revenue generator, but it was a really impactful experience. We actually had the band come to the Helena Christian School and meet all the kids, so those kids have an experience that they'll never forget. And really, so regardless of my resources or my family's resources, just trying to be a blessing to the community and those around us. So really, regardless of our resources, the capacity for impact is it's there, right?
Yeah, and we shouldn't underestimate that either, because
Right.
you think, well, what kind of impact can I make on my community, on my, it starts with your family. It starts with your family.
Yes.
And I think people underestimate how important that is, and really it should start with yourself, because whatever kind of growth you have in yourself, again, is going to ripple out into your family, into your community, into every life that you touch. And so you should never underestimate that. And I feel like I just got on my high horse about it, but it's just it's so important that people know that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, or what resources you have, you can make an impact.
Well, and here's the truth and the reality of it too, Laura, is sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, and part of the reason, it's easier to influence those around us that aren't directly connected to us on a daily basis, right? So we can go out and be, a hero, so to speak, to somebody, right? But then the hardest impact is actually in the house, based on my experience, right? Especially with 5 kids and a wife, and trying to influence positive, growth and lead kids. Let's face it, kids don't want to be led necessarily. There's a lot of competition and just normal things that occur, and sometimes it's harder to have impact, even though that's the most important space for impact. It's really difficult to promote that in those environments.
Yeah, I totally agree. And guys, I want to remind you, if you have any questions for Ryan, please put those in the comments. We're going to be getting to those here shortly. So you talk about, and I'm trying to decide, okay, I think this might be a good time to talk about the story of the special forces guy that you met and the impact that you had in his life, and he and yours, actually. I think it's a really, really amazing story. Do you,
For sure.
could you share that with us?
Yep, absolutely. So this is just really for me personally, and maybe even for the organization Impact Montana. I would say this is the story that really fits what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do as a man. So in July, I got a call from a sheriff from a nearby county. And this sheriff was actually, he wasn't a personal friend. He was just somebody that I had met because we had him come as a guest speaker in April. And so I had his number. I knew who he was. I had heard his testimony on leadership. But when I got the call, I was thinking that he wanted me just to come down and talk to his department team, right, and share some Impact Montana stuff, help them really try to be proactive in managing their stress, right? That's certainly within the scope of what Impact Montana is able to do. And I was wrong. The sheriff asked me, he said, Ryan, I just got a special forces vet that I brought in on partner member family assault and drug charges. Would you be willing to come down and meet with him? He's in a really bad place. And I said, I mean, I'll be honest, I was hesitant. I had not done any kind of work like that before. And my initial response, or what I wanted to respond, or how I wanted to respond, was, sorry, Sheriff, I don't have the time to do that. But like so often occurs, I got a tug on my heart saying, Ryan, if you're gonna live up to who you say you are, you need to go down there regardless of your personal desires, right? And so a couple days later, I went down to this detention center and I met this individual, and he was in a very bad place. I could tell that he was still coming down from the substances that he was on. He was just in a bad spot. And so we talked for about 2 hours, and I had no conditions under which I was there for. I just wanted to listen to him and try to really help him identify why he ended up there and whether or not he had a desire to move out of those circumstances, right? And in that 2 hours, I said, I am willing to come down here as often as I can and walk through this journey with you. If you're willing, if you're motivated to change, if you have a desire to grow through these circumstances. And he said, yeah, I think I do. And so at that point, I committed to him to doing that. And the other piece that was just a really valuable part of that conversation, it goes back to perspective and worldview. And I said, hey, what is your belief system? You were a high functioning vet or a special forces operator, right? Mm-hmm. High functioning dude. What is your perspective? What is your worldview? What is your belief system that is going to help you navigate out of these circumstances? And in that conversation, it was obvious that his identity, his purpose, his world was all connected to the military. And when he was medically retired from the military, not by choice, obviously, he was told he was no longer able to serve in the military. He disconnected from his identity, his purpose. That led to hopelessness. It led to personal destruction and destructive, behaviors towards others, and just put him down this very dark path. And so I said, what does your faith look like? Where does faith come into this world? And he said, I guess I believe there's a God. I've never really been in tune. I've always trusted that God was alongside me, especially in the military, because of the things that he, navigated through and his deployments. But he never was tuned into a relationship with God. And so, really it was at that point that I encouraged him just to really even open up the scriptures and start by reading the book of John to get an understanding of who Jesus is as a man and as God, obviously, and start to unpack that for him. And I left it at that. And the next time I went down there, I had some Impact Montana resources. I had a Thrive Factors assessment. I encouraged him to consider going through our 90-day Live to Thrive challenge in the detention center, which was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And he committed to that. He actually ended up reading the New Testament twice and the full Bible once while he was in the jail. I gave him a copy of Chasing Impact. He read that twice. I mean, this guy is literally a changed person. He gave his life to Christ in jail, which was a beautiful, beautiful moment. We prayed together, and here's the thing. So, really, Impact Montana, it's not a outward facing Christian organization, mm-hmm. but spiritual health and wellness is one of our Thrive Factors, right? So really the beauty of it is that I get to treat this like the chaplaincy and have conversations. And when the opportunity is presented and they're open to that discussion, then there's some amazing, just opportunities and mm-hmm. conversations to help individuals where they're at. So, beautiful relationship was formed. In November, he was able to be released from the detention center into the VA's residential treatment program with an ankle bracelet to monitor his activity. And actually, just last week, he was able to have the ankle bracelet taken off because they're, I mean, just they're not concerned with with who this guy is at this point. So it's an amazing testimony, and I know you're going to go here next, so I'll kind of tie this loose end up.
You figured me out, haven't you, Ryan?
So in our conversations in jail, I asked him, after he had committed his life to Christ, I asked him if he had ever been baptized, and he said, no, but I want to. As soon as I get out of here, I want to be baptized. And because we didn't really know when that was going to be, and the logistics didn't really allow us to do it at the church that we attend, shortly after his release, he missed that boat. But I told him we could do this at the Warrior Plunge. So every New Year's Eve day, we do a cold water immersion. I guess a Warrior Plunge, we call it. And I told him I'd be happy to baptize you at the Warrior Plunge. And he not only yes, but heck yes, let's do it there. So I had the honor of baptizing him, December 31st, and just an amazing experience for both of us, honestly.
I bet that was some cold water, Ryan.
It was, but that was the second time that I was in the water, and at that point, I knew it wasn't going to last long, so it was easy. The pain was worth it, Laura.
It's almost always worth it. The right kind of pain.
Yeah, for sure.
So we asked him to be on the show, or at least do an interview, and I think he has agreed. Is that correct?
It's I think he's planning on watching tonight. He might be on tonight, actually.
Okay.
And if that's the case, he and I will follow up and just confirm. But I'm pretty confident that he's willing to do that.
Yeah, that would be a true honor to have him, to be able to interview him and hear his story as well. So I'm really glad that you shared that with us. And I always feel like the clock's running out, that we're running out of time. And so, but before we leave, I want you to talk about Impact Montana, and specifically not only your role there and their mission, but could you touch on those Thrive factors that you referred to earlier? What are those?
Nope. Yeah, so the Thrive Factors model, it's really similar to a lot of holistic health and wellness models, but it includes physical health and wellness, spiritual health and wellness, family wellness, career wellness, social wellness, and financial wellness. So our philosophy, and Impact Montana is not clinical, so nothing that we do is offering clinical advice. It's simply bringing this Thrive Factors model together and helping individuals introspectively consider how well they're functioning or operating in each of those Thrive Factors, and then working with them to develop really their prescription to thrive. I love that metaphor. And it's been an amazing journey to walk through a lot of individuals in each of these 6 functional areas of wellness and help them level up based on where it is they want to, where they want to go.
And so your organization is based out of Helena, Montana, and primarily serving, is it veterans and first responders? Is that correct?
It is. So it's current military, it's vets, it's first responders, and it's their family members. So we do not neglect the family, which is one of the things that, I would say separates Impact Montana from a lot of other organizations.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple more things before we leave here. And guys, again, if you have questions, put those in the comments. I don't see any questions yet, but a couple of things I want to leave people with based on your opinion, your experience, what you've gone through, what you've seen others go through. What do you think is the biggest thing that holds people back from living their full potential?
Yeah, so I think this is a loaded question because everybody's unique, right? Everybody's got their story. I think when people get to the place, especially here in Montana, and not every state poses its own unique, challenges, but I can speak specifically to Montana because, that's obviously where I've spent the majority of my life. But I think when we get to a place where we're struggling, instead of reaching out for a hand up, our tendency is to isolate and pull
Withdraw.
back,
Yeah.
and think that we can navigate through those circumstances by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when we do that, I think we start to create some unhealthy habits in that, whether that's alcohol, eating. I mean, honestly, I think it's underestimated how important nutrition is when it comes to managing our stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we've already talked a little bit about that. But and then when we isolate and we cut ourselves off from the world, I think that's when hopelessness has a tendency to creep in, and that's a bad place to be. So, I think what I try to promote with individuals is trying to help them understand that you need to have people to be able to reach out to, right? So it's always important to have an accountability partner, right? Somebody that you trust fully, that you can reach out to and say, hey, look, I am in the stink. I don't know what to do. I need help. Please give me a hand up. And in November, I'll be honest, it was my faith, it was my tribe, and it was my functional wellness, health providers that really helped me get the boost that I needed to get up out of that mire, the muck and mire, really, I would say pretty rapidly. So I can't emphasize how important that is. And then really, I think the other piece of it is looking at that Thrive Factors model and recognizing that if someone's focused on those 6 functional areas of wellness, having a plan, creating your own prescription to thrive, right? So whether it's it's physical health and wellness, it's the triad of wellness, it's nutrition, exercise, and sleep. If we can't create a plan to influence those 3 things, it's just a really important place. All 6 of those functional areas of wellness really should have something attached to them, daily habits that will help us, kind of change the trajectory of where we're at.
Right, because we'll slide into our default modes so fast.
Yep.
When things start going sideways, the first thing we do is slide into default mode, and that can be dangerous sometimes because building those new habits takes time, right?
Yes.
And it's not easy. And I think that's why so many people they reach up the slope and then they slide down so many times because it takes time. And like you said, having those resources, having that tribe, and knowing you're not alone in it is so valuable, I think. Now, in your book, you talk about starting small. And really quickly, I just want to give some encouragement to people that might be struggling with something. And in your book, you say, in my work with individuals who are struggling, more often than not, the struggle is so significant that even having a place to start can be difficult. In this case, impact is not even a consideration. They're not thriving. They're just trying to survive. And we've all been there. Starting small is paramount in the journey towards thriving. And some of the examples you give are very simple. Get up and go for a walk. Get some fresh air. If it has to do with finances, cut up your credit card. You talk about spending time with a loved one. Simple, small steps like that can just start to get you going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I would even add, Laura, because it's been a couple years since the book was published, I would even add some biohacking tactics to that equation. So cold water immersion therapy or just cold showers. So the endorphin flush that you can get from cold water is amazing. I've been doing cold water therapy now for a year and a half, and it is an
Before it
addiction.
was trending.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I think I'd like to say I've helped it trend.
Cold water challenge. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So breath work, meditation, even something as simple as grounding. And obviously in the winter, grounding is not all that easy to do. But I mean, if you can spend and this is a Gary Brecka tactic that he promotes. So I don't want to pretend like it's, my original content.
Yeah.
But going out first thing in the morning with first sunlight, barefooted, and walking around a natural surface for 6 minutes is life changing. It
That's
actually
amazing.
changes the pH level in your blood.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. That's new. That's new information for me.
it's a Gary Brecka.
It's extraordinary that something so simple can have such a big impact, isn't it?
Yes. Yep.
We think that it's a complex, complicated. We make it into be, complicated when it doesn't have to be. And so, yeah, I think
Mhm.
starting small, because when you're overwhelmed and, you're in that big black hole and you don't see a way out, having just something to grab onto, just one small thing can just lead you, in that one step.
And I think that's the proactive piece. If people can build that prescription to thrive before they get to a place of chaos
Yeah.
or stress. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been working on this, for myself for a couple of years, really since I was working on the book, and so I know what my prescription to thrive looks like, right? And it's so useful to have that in the midst of chaos, because it'll slow you down from spinning at a rapid pace, probably better than we can even imagine.
Right, because there is so much going on in our lives that it tends to be like, like a river. And if we're not navigating that correctly, it can just take us in places we did not expect.
And that's a really good point, Laura. In fact, it's something that I strongly advocated for also in the book. But creating margin, right? When you're assessing each of the 6 Thrive factors, getting ready to build that Thrive action plan, you also have to assess the toxicity and the aspects of those 6 functional areas that are probably limiting your ability to thrive, really. So you have to identify those those toxic behaviors, or maybe it's relationships, and remove them from the equation to build room for the things that are actually going to help you get to where it is you want to go.
Right.
That's that margin that needs to be created. It's so incredibly important, and the beauty of it is it's a biblical concept too.
Yeah. That's so cool. Well, we're officially over the hour now, Ryan. I mean, that time flies when you're having fun, right? And we
Absolutely. Yep.
almost made it through everything. So where can people find you? Impact Montana, where can they find your book? All of that good stuff before we leave.
Yes. So I do hover around social media. I have Facebook, a LinkedIn, Instagram account. So I'd love to connect with anybody out there. Whether it's here in Montana or across the country. Love to hear your story. If there's an opportunity for me to share, a little bit more with you, I'd be happy to do that. So that's me personally. Impact Montana can be found at www.impactmontana.org, which I see that scrolling, on the bottom of the screen. So that's fantastic. We are on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn. And then if you are in fact interested in my book, there is a link also in the description. But I will say that I have a pretty significant number of copies that, if you reach out to me personally and are interested in a signed copy and a personal note, I would love to be able to share that with you. So,
Oh, I
yeah,
already ordered mine, so now I'm going to have to meet you so you can sign it for me.
I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. I would love that. And one last thing I want to leave people with too, before I let you give us if you have any parting thoughts. There's this I think this might have just been a Facebook post of yours. You said, out of all the biohacks, tips, tricks, and things that have the ability to influence your life, it is perspective that has the power to change it for the better. Wise words.
Yeah, well, it is. We have to have a why, right? We have to
Yeah.
have a why to overcome the chaos, the stress, the pain. We have to find a value in the pain, and that comes from the why. So, really, one of the first things that we promote as an organization is helping individuals identify their why, and that why has to be bigger than ourselves, because we're a temporal being, right? It has to be something bigger than ourselves, whether that's, related to the community around us, our faith. Hopefully, it's faith, our belief system. But the why is an incredibly important piece of this puzzle, and just helps us to navigate through whatever life throws at us.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that helped you guys watching. Ryan, is there anything that we left out that you would like to leave us with tonight, or did we pretty much cover the bases?
Well, I think, you know what? I think I'm just looking at some of my notes. I think we did a good job of covering that gamut, that entire spectrum. I want to thank you, Laura, for giving me the opportunity, for being able to share my story, and I hope that it brings value to somebody's experience and the time that they spent with this show tonight. And thank you, for hosting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I want to high five you through the screen. You're not too far away from me. I might just be able to go visit. So I think maybe I'll do that instead.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, Ryan. I'm going to move on to what to expect for next week. All right, guys. So what did you think of the interview with Ryan Luchau? I enjoyed that so much. I love Ryan's story. I love all the stories that he told, and there's so much information that was just scratching the surface, really, of the information that Ryan provides in his book. And if you want to check out Impact Montana, there's just so many good things that they're doing with that organization. So a couple of announcements here I want to run by you before we talk about what to expect for next week. Lots of good stuff happening, guys. I want to give a huge thank you to all the supporters who are supporting Defenders Live on the locals.com channel by becoming a paid member. We just dropped episode 6 of Defenders Uncensored. I think it was episode 6. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm starting to lose track. Episode 6 of Defenders Uncensored on that locals channel. Defenders Uncensored is a series of roundtable discussions where we talk about current events and some topics that might be considered controversial, but we don't think they should be. And that's the reason that it's on locals, because it probably would get kicked off Facebook or YouTube if we had it there. So the shows are full of truthful conversation sprinkled with slightly inappropriate humor. And I look forward to them every time. If you can't handle a little humor, then you shouldn't watch. And if you're easily offended, you definitely shouldn't watch. So we're going to be sharing some new stuff on that channel. If you're interested in checking that out, you can go to locals.com and then go to the Discover tab and search up Defenders Live. And that's where you'll see that series. We've got some other fun things coming up on that. In fact, Ryan, I think, is going to be on a roundtable discussion on a different topic, not current events, but with some other guests that we've had in the past. So be looking for that. And then on January 31st, I'm going to be doing something new and different with Neil Widener of Active Self-Protection. And again, I can't come up with a better name other than 7 on 7. We're going to be asking each other 7 random questions on the air live. And that's going to be hosted not only on my channel, but on the Active Self-Protection app as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can go to watch.activeselfprotection.com and get that app for 30% off by using the code Defenders30. And you'll be seeing us there on January 31st. And if you have any clever, fun questions that I can ask Neil Widener, I would really appreciate all the help I could get. You can email me those questions at laura@defenders-usa.com if you want to get in touch with me. Always looking for good questions. So what to expect for next week. So if you were on the locals channel, you saw that I had an early release of the Lisa Stiers interview of Pac West Defense. And that interview was titled The Truth About Domestic Violence. I'm going to now be airing that episode publicly for the rest of the world. Now it's been, I think, a month since I did the early release. So I'm going to be airing that next week. On the channel. Lisa Stiers shares a powerful story during that interview about her life and about how she's using her experiences that she's gone through to now help others in the mission that she has. It's a really powerful interview. pretty emotional for me, actually for both of us, after that interview was done. I won't go into the details, but just to say it's one that you won't want to miss. So I'm going to be airing that next Wednesday. So that will be at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, same time, same place. Until then, take care.